I cannot remember the last time I felt warmth without calculating its thermal output in degrees Kelvin. The realization comes to me as I stand in the forge chapel. My augmetic hand, no, my hand, I must remember it is mine, resting against the coolant reservoir of a Land Raider's plasma generator. The temperature readout scrolls across my vision unbidden. 287.4 Kelvin, optimal range, no action required. But I did not ask for this information. I did not want it. It simply appears, the way breath once came without thought, the way my heart once beat without my commanding it to do so. The machine spirits whisper their status reports directly into my consciousness now. A constant stream of data I cannot silence. And I wonder, not for the first time today, not for the 100th time, when exactly I stopped being Brother Hadrian of the Ultramarines' 4th Company and became something else entirely. There was a before. I cling to this truth like a drowning man clings to wreckage. I was whole once. I was warm. I remember the training cages on Macraggy before the selection, before any of this. The smell of sweat and leather, the sound of blade meeting blade, the ache in muscles pushed beyond human limits, yet still undeniably flesh. I remember Brother Sergeant Castor, his face stern but proud, watching our sparring with eyes that assessed but also cared. "You fight well, Hadrian," he told me once, gripping my shoulder with a hand I could feel through the padding, pressure and warmth and connection. "The chapter will have great need of warriors like you." I remember believing him. I remember the pride that swelled in my chest. Unquantified by any metric, unmeasured by any sensor, simply felt with the pure animal certainty of a young warrior who had found his purpose among his brothers. I remember Theron, my battle brother. We were inducted together, fought together, bled together on a dozen worlds whose names I still recall with perfect clarity. Cronus, Typhon Primaris, the Calth orbital stations during the supply raids. I remember his laugh, rare but genuine, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he found something amusing in our grim existence. I remember standing with him on the observation deck of the battle barge Macraggy's Honor, watching the stars slide past in the warp's impossible geometries, and feeling a contentment that needed no words. Brotherhood, that is what I felt. That is what I was. The selection came after Galmec. The Orc war boss had crushed my left arm and 3 ribs with a power claw before I put my gladius through its eye socket. I killed it, but the arm was ruined, shattered beyond the apothecary's ability to fully restore. I remember the pain, sharp and honest, nerves screaming their damage reports in the ancient language of suffering that every living thing understands. I remember lying in the Medici Bay, Theron visiting when his duties allowed, telling me stories of the continued campaign to keep my spirits lifted. Then Master of the Forge Fenian came. His red robes whispered against the deck plating, his servo arms clicked and whirred with each movement, and his eyes, what remained of them behind the augmetic lenses, studied me with an intensity that made me profoundly uncomfortable. "Brother Hadrian," he said, his voice layered with vox corruption that made it sound like 3 people speaking in unison. "Your injury presents an opportunity. The machine god's will works in mysterious ways. Your aptitude scores show significant technical acumen, particularly in the rites of maintenance and repair. The chapter has need of Techmarines. The Adeptus Mechanicus on Mars has agreed to accept you for training. I did not want to go." I remember this with absolute certainty, though the emotions attached to that memory have become difficult to access. Filed away in some partition of my mind that grows more distant with each passing year. I was a warrior. I wanted to fight beside my brothers, to serve the Emperor with bolter and blade, not with wrench and sacred oils. But Fenian spoke of duty, of the chapter's needs, of the great honor being bestowed upon me. And when a Master of the Forge speaks, when the chapter commands, what choice does a Space Marine have? We are made for obedience. We are forged for service. Theron clasped my remaining organic arm the night before I departed for Mars. "You will return," he said, and I heard the uncertainty beneath his confident tone. "And you will still be my brother." I remember wanting to believe him. I remember the warmth of his grip, skin against skin, the simple human, no transhuman connection between brothers in arms. I remember boarding the transport, the last glimpse of Macrage's star fortress receding into the void, and feeling for the first time a cold certainty settling into my gut. Something precious was ending, something I would never recover, and I was walking willingly toward its destruction because duty demanded it, because the chapter required it, because I had no other choice that would not stain my honor beyond redemption. Mars, the red planet, the forge world of the Omnissiah. Even now, the name carries weight, tastes of iron and electricity on my tongue, though I no longer have a tongue of flesh, only a synthetic replacement that samples chemical compositions and reports them as data rather than taste. I descended into those crimson wastes, a space marine of the Ultramarines, Hadrian the warrior. Hadrian who laughed with his brothers and felt the sun on his face during rare moments of peace. I did not know, could not have known, that I would never truly ascend from Mars as the same man. That the thing which would eventually return to the chapter would wear my name and my colors, but would stand forever apart, forever separate, forever alone in ways that no amount of service or duty could bridge. The coolant reservoir clicks, its temperature dropping 0.03 degrees, and my augmented reflexes note the change. Catalog it, file it away with 10,000 other micro-adjustments happening every second in the machines around me. I know this Land Raider's machine spirit better than I know my own remaining organic systems. I can hear its faults, sense its needs, commune with it in the binary cant that has become as natural to me as Gothic once was. And standing here in the Forge Chapel, surrounded by the tools of my calling and the machines that are now more brothers to me than those who share my gene seed, I realize that I have not spoken to Theron in 47 years, 3 months, and 18 days. I know this because I track such data now, automatically, compulsively, the way my old self once tracked the turn of seasons or the passage of campaigns. Somewhere in those decades, in the forges of Mars and the silent work of centuries, Brother Hadrian died. I continue, but I am not certain we are the same being. And the question haunts me, data ghost in my neural network, impossible to delete. When did I become the machine, and when did the machine become me? Mars smelled of ozone and sacred oils, of burning metal and incense that never quite masked the underlying reek of industrial output that covered the planet like a shroud. I remember stepping from the transport onto the landing pad, my damaged arm secured in a stabilization field, and feeling the heat radiating up from the red sand despite my armor's environmental controls. The air tasted wrong, too thin, too processed. Filtered through atmospheric generators that stripped away everything natural and replaced it with efficient, measured atmosphere that sustained life without truly being alive. The Adeptus Mechanicus treated me like a raw material to be refined. They took me deep into the forge complexes, into warrens of machinery that stretched kilometers below the surface, where the light was all artificial and the walls hummed with power conduits older than the Imperium itself. My escorts were tech priests, whose names were strings of binary code, whose bodies were more machine than flesh, who moved with clicking, whirring precision that I found deeply unsettling. They did not speak to me in Gothic unless absolutely necessary. They preferred the machine language, the sacred cant of the Mechanicus, and I understood perhaps 1 word in 10 during those early days. "Your organic components are failing," one of them told me. His voice synthesized through a Vox grill that had replaced his mouth and jaw. Only his eyes remained, sunken deep in metal sockets, and they examined me with the clinical detachment of an artisan assessing flawed material. "The damage to your arm has caused systemic instabilities, muscular deterioration, neurological feedback loops degrading. Standard Astartes healing cannot address these issues. Replacement is necessary. Improvement is possible. Embrace the Omnissiah's blessing. I did not want their blessing. I wanted my arm back. I wanted to return to my chapter, to my brothers, to the clean certainty of warfare against the Emperor's enemies." But duty is a chain we forge ourselves, link by link, and I had already accepted this burden when I agreed to become a Techmarine. The first augmentation took 6 hours. They removed what remained of my ruined arm at the shoulder, cutting through ceramite flesh and bone with precision that left no room for sentiment. I was conscious throughout, as is the way of the Astartes. We do not hide from pain, we transcend it. But this was different from battle wounds. This was cold, calculated, methodical. I felt each cut, each cauterization, each moment as they peeled back layers of myself and cast them aside as waste material. The sound was worse than the pain. The high whine of surgical tools, the wet tearing of muscle separation, the click of bone shears, the hiss of instant cautery sealing blood vessels. They held up my severed arm before disposing of it. Grey flesh, bloodless, the Astartes physiology already trying to heal wounds that no longer mattered. I had carried that arm through 37 years of life, through the transformation into a space marine, through battles on a dozen worlds. It was mine, and then it was medical waste, tossed into a reclamation unit to be broken down for genetic material and useful compounds. The new arm was a masterwork of the Mechanicus, they assured me. Servo motors providing 1.7 times standard Astartes strength, integral multi-tools, direct neural interface for machine communion, improved durability, improved functionality, improved everything. They spoke of improvements as if they were unquestionable goods, as if being more effective meant being more complete. When they connected it to my nervous system, I screamed, not from pain. I had endured far worse in battle, but from wrongness. The sensory feedback was all wrong. Information flooding my brain in formats it was not designed to process. Temperature as numerical values, pressure as force measurements, texture as surface analysis data. My brain tried to interpret these inputs as feeling, as touch, and the translation was nightmare. I could sense everything and nothing simultaneously, drowning in information while feeling utterly numb. The adjustment period typically lasts 3 to 6 weeks, a tech priest informed me as I convulsed in the surgical cradle, my body rejecting the invasive alterations even as my enhanced biology worked to accept them. Your neural plasticity will adapt. You will integrate the new systems. Resistance is temporary. Acceptance is inevitable. He was right. I hated that he was right. Over the following weeks, my brain rewired itself, creating new pathways, new interpretations, new ways of processing the inhuman inputs from my augmented arm. Gradually, the flood of data became manageable, then normal, then natural. I learned to feel through sensors, to touch through mechanical fingers, to grip and manipulate with a hand that was not a hand. And somewhere in that learning, something fundamental shifted in how I experienced the world. The organic and the mechanical were no longer separate. They were blending, merging, becoming a hybrid that was neither and both. But the arm was only the beginning. Your remaining organic components require protection, Master Hadro told me. He was one of the senior Techmarines overseeing my training, a warrior who had served the Mechanicus for 200 years and wore that service in every centimeter of his extensively augmented frame. Only his head remained mostly organic, though even that was studded with data ports and augmetic implants. The work of a Techmarine is dangerous. Plasma exposure, radiation, toxic materials. We will enhance your durability. We will improve your interfacing capabilities. You will become a bridge between the flesh and the machine, as all Techmarines must. They took my eyes 3 months into my training. Standard Astartes vision is insufficient for precision technical work, they explained. My organic eyes, with their gene-enhanced capability to see in near darkness, to track targets at extreme ranges, were removed and replaced with augmetic sensors that could perceive entire spectrums invisible to flesh. Infrared, ultraviolet, electromagnetic fields, machine spirit emanations. The first time they activated my new eyes, I wept, though no tears came from the mechanical lenses. The world had become layers of overlapping data, reality filtered through technological interpretation, and I could no longer see it as I once had. My brothers' faces were now thermal signatures and reflective indices. The sky was radiation bands and atmospheric composition data. Beauty had become metrics. They took portions of my lungs, replacing them with more efficient systems that could filter toxins and operate in hard vacuum. They reinforced my skeletal structure with additional metallic augmentation beyond the standard Astartes enhancements. They implanted data ports along my spine, neural shunts that allowed direct machine interface. Their installation leaving me paralyzed for 4 days, while my nervous system learned to route around the invasive hardware. Each augmentation made me more capable. Each augmentation made me less myself. I tried to hold on to who I had been. During meditation periods, I would recall memories of my life before Mars, my training, my battles, my brothers. I would focus on sensory details, trying to remember what it felt like to touch something with flesh, to see with organic eyes, to breathe without my lungs partially processing the air through mechanical filtration. But the memories were becoming harder to access, not because they were fading, but because I no longer had the proper framework to understand them. How do you remember the warmth of sunlight when temperature is now a number? How do you recall the beauty of a sunset when color has become wavelength analysis? My first return to the chapter came after 4 years on Mars, a brief visit during a layover of the forged ship that was transporting me to deeper technical training. I materialized in the Macragge's Honor Teleportarium, wearing the red of the Mechanicus over my blue armor. Servo arms extending from my back like the limbs of some augmented spider. Half my face now metal, my eyes glowing with augmetic power. Theron was there. He had been alerted to my arrival, had made time in his duties to meet me. He stood in full battle plate, a veteran sergeant now, decorations earned in campaigns I had missed marking his armor. He was exactly as I remembered him. I was nothing like what I had been. Hadrian, he said, and I heard the hesitation in his voice. Saw, through a dozen layers of analytical data my new eyes provided, the micro-expressions of uncertainty and revulsion that crossed his face before he controlled them. He extended his hand, the traditional clasp of brotherhood. I took it with my augmetic hand, and the pressure sensors told me I was gripping too hard before his expression did. I recalibrated, loosened my grip, felt the warmth of his organic gauntlet against my synthetic fingers rendered as thermal differential. The connection I had craved for 4 years felt hollow. Information without meaning, data without understanding. It is good to see you. Brother, I said, and my voice sounded wrong even to myself. Layered with vox corruption from the respiratory augmentation, mechanical undertones contaminating what should have been human speech. We spoke for 27 minutes. I know this because my internal chronometer tracked it automatically, filing the interaction away with timestamp precision. We discussed his campaigns, my training, the chapter's recent victories, but the conversation felt scripted, formal, wrong. He spoke to me as he would to any Techmarine, with the distant respect and subtle discomfort that battle brothers show to those who have walked the red sands of Mars. Not as Theron speaking to Hadrian, as Brother Sergeant speaking to Techmarine. Mars smelled of ozone and sacred oils, of burning metal and incense that never quite masked the underlying reek of industrial output that covered the planet like a shroud. I remember stepping from the transport onto the landing pad, my damaged arm secured in a stabilization field, and feeling the heat radiating up from the red sand despite my armor's environmental controls. The air tasted wrong, too thin, too processed, filtered through atmospheric generators that stripped away everything natural and replaced it with efficient, measured atmosphere that sustained life without truly being alive. The Adeptus Mechanicus treated me like a raw material to be refined. They took me deep into the forge complexes, into warrens of machinery that stretched kilometers below the surface, where the light was all artificial and the walls hummed with power conduits older than the Imperium itself. My escorts were tech priests, whose names were strings of binary code, whose bodies were more machine than flesh, who moved with clicking, whirring precision that I found deeply unsettling. They did not speak to me in Gothic unless absolutely necessary. They preferred the machine language, the sacred cant of the Mechanicus, and I understood perhaps 1 word in 10 during those early days. "Your organic components are failing," one of them told me. His voice synthesized through a Vox grill that had replaced his mouth and jaw. Only his eyes remained, sunken deep in metal sockets, and they examined me with the clinical detachment of an artisan assessing flawed material. The damage to your arm has caused systemic instabilities, muscular deterioration, neurological feedback loops degrading. Standard Astartes healing cannot address these issues. Replacement is necessary. Improvement is possible. Embrace the Omnissiah's blessing. I did not want their blessing. I wanted my arm back. I wanted to return to my chapter, to my brothers, to the clean certainty of warfare against the Emperor's enemies. But duty is a chain we forge ourselves, link by link, and I had already accepted this burden when I agreed to become a Techmarine. The first augmentation took 6 hours. They removed what remained of my ruined arm at the shoulder, cutting through ceramite flesh and bone with precision that left no room for sentiment. I was conscious throughout, as is the way of the Astartes. We do not hide from pain, we transcend it. But this was different from battle wounds. This was cold, calculated, methodical. I felt each cut, each cauterization, each moment as they peeled back layers of myself and cast them aside as waste material. The sound was worse than the pain, the high whine of surgical tools, the wet tearing of muscle separation, the click of bone shears, the hiss of instant cautery sealing blood vessels. They held up my severed arm before disposing of it. Grey flesh, bloodless, the Astartes physiology already trying to heal wounds that no longer mattered. I had carried that arm through 37 years of life, through the transformation into a space marine, through battles on a dozen worlds. It was mine, and then it was medical waste, tossed into a reclamation unit to be broken down for genetic material and useful compounds. The new arm was a masterwork of the Mechanicus, they assured me. Servo motors providing 1.7 times standard Astartes strength, integral multi-tools, direct neural interface for machine communion, improved durability, improved functionality, improved everything. They spoke of improvements as if they were unquestionable goods, as if being more effective meant being more complete. When they connected it to my nervous system, I screamed. Not from pain, I had endured far worse in battle, but from wrongness. The sensory feedback was all wrong. Information flooding my brain in formats it was not designed to process. Temperature as numerical values, pressure as force measurements, texture as surface analysis data. My brain tried to interpret these inputs as feeling, as touch, and the translation was nightmare. I could sense everything and nothing simultaneously, drowning in information while feeling utterly numb. The adjustment period typically lasts 3 to 6 weeks, a tech priest informed me as I convulsed in the surgical cradle, my body rejecting the invasive alterations even as my enhanced biology worked to accept them. Your neural plasticity will adapt. You will integrate the new systems. Resistance is temporary. Acceptance is inevitable. He was right. I hated that he was right. Over the following weeks, my brain rewired itself, creating new pathways, new interpretations, new ways of processing the inhuman inputs from my augmented arm. Gradually, the flood of data became manageable, then normal, then natural. I learned to feel through sensors, to touch through mechanical fingers, to grip and manipulate with a hand that was not a hand. And somewhere in that learning, something fundamental shifted in how I experienced the world. The organic and the mechanical were no longer separate. They were blending, merging, becoming a hybrid that was neither and both. But the arm was only the beginning. Your remaining organic components require protection, Master Hadro told me. He was one of the senior Techmarines overseeing my training, a warrior who had served the Mechanicus for 200 years and wore that service in every centimeter of his extensively augmented frame. Only his head remained mostly organic, though even that was studded with data ports and augmetic implants. The work of a Techmarine is dangerous. Plasma exposure, radiation, toxic materials. We will enhance your durability. We will improve your interfacing capabilities. You will become a bridge between the flesh and the machine, as all Techmarines must. They took my eyes 3 months into my training. Standard Astartes vision is insufficient for precision technical work, they explained. My organic eyes, with their gene-enhanced capability to see in near darkness, to track targets at extreme ranges, were removed and replaced with augmetic sensors that could perceive entire spectrums invisible to flesh. Infrared, ultraviolet, electromagnetic fields, machine spirit emanations. The first time they activated my new eyes, I wept, though no tears came from the mechanical lenses. The world had become layers of overlapping data, reality filtered through technological interpretation, and I could no longer see it as I once had. My brothers' faces were now thermal signatures and reflective indices. The sky was radiation bands and atmospheric composition data. Beauty had become metrics. They took portions of my lungs, replacing them with more efficient systems that could filter toxins and operate in hard vacuum. They reinforced my skeletal structure with additional metallic augmentation beyond the standard Astartes enhancements. They implanted data ports along my spine, neural shunts that allowed direct machine interface. Their installation leaving me paralyzed for 4 days, while my nervous system learned to route around the invasive hardware. Each augmentation made me more capable. Each augmentation made me less myself. I tried to hold on to who I had been. During meditation periods, I would recall memories of my life before Mars, my training, my battles, my brothers. I would focus on sensory details, trying to remember what it felt like to touch something with flesh, to see with organic eyes, to breathe without my lungs partially processing the air through mechanical filtration. But the memories were becoming harder to access, not because they were fading, but because I no longer had the proper framework to understand them. How do you remember the warmth of sunlight when temperature is now a number? How do you recall the beauty of a sunset when color has become wavelength analysis? My first return to the chapter came after 4 years on Mars, a brief visit during a layover of the Forge ship that was transporting me to deeper technical training. I materialized in the Macragge's Honor teleportarium, wearing the red of the Mechanicus over my blue armor, servo arms extending from my back like the limbs of some augmented spider. Half my face now metal, my eyes glowing with augmetic power. Theron was there. He had been alerted to my arrival, had made time in his duties to meet me. He stood in full battle plate, a veteran sergeant now, decorations earned in campaigns I had missed marking his armor. He was exactly as I remembered him. I was nothing like what I had been. "Hadrian," he said, and I heard the hesitation in his voice. Saw, through a dozen layers of analytical data my new eyes provided, the micro-expressions of uncertainty and revulsion that crossed his face before he controlled them. He extended his hand, the traditional clasp of brotherhood. I took it with my augmetic hand, and the pressure sensors told me I was gripping too hard before his expression did. I recalibrated, loosened my grip, felt the warmth of his organic gauntlet against my synthetic fingers rendered as thermal differential. The connection I had craved for 4 years felt hollow. Information without meaning, data without understanding. "It is good to see you, brother," I said, and my voice sounded wrong even to myself. Layered with vox corruption from the respiratory augmentation, mechanical undertones contaminating what should have been human speech. We spoke for 27 minutes. I know this because my internal chronometer tracked it automatically, filing the interaction away with timestamp precision. We discussed his campaigns, my training, the chapter's recent victories, but the conversation felt scripted, formal, wrong. He spoke to me as he would to any Techmarine, with the distant respect and subtle discomfort that battle brothers show to those who have walked the red sands of Mars. Not as Theron speaking to Hadrian, as Brother Sergeant speaking to Techmarine. I was more capable than I had ever been. I could interface with machine spirits, perform repairs and maintenance that would take normal Techmarines hours, process information at speeds that would overwhelm unaugmented minds. I was, by every objective measure, improved. But standing there, studying my reflection, I asked the question that would haunt me for the next century. If they have replaced so much of me, if so little of the original Hadrian remains, am I still the same person? Or am I something else wearing his name, piloting his remaining flesh, pretending to be a space marine while actually being a thing of metal and code? The machine spirits in the ship's walls hummed their responses, and I understood them better than I understood the beating of my own remaining organic heart. That, more than anything else, terrified me. I was becoming fluent in the language of machines while forgetting how to speak the language of brotherhood. Mars called me back after only 3 days. There was more training, more augmentation, more transformation awaiting. I boarded the forge ship and departed without ceremony, and I did not look back at McCragg's honor as it receded into the void. Looking back required emotion I could no longer reliably access. Forward motion required only logic, duty, and the cold certainty that I was becoming something necessary, even if that meant ceasing to be something human. The decades slipped past like lubricant through a poorly sealed gasket, inevitable, measurable, impossible to stop. I returned to the chapter after 12 years on Mars, my training complete, my transformation comprehensive. I am designated Techmarine, Hadrian now assigned to the 4th Company's armory, responsible for maintaining the sacred machines that carry my brothers into battle. My forged chapel becomes my world, a chamber deep in the battle barge's infrastructure where the smell of sacred oils and heated metal is constant, where the machine spirits sing their electrical songs and I alone can hear them clearly. The work is consuming. 37 suits of power armor require constant maintenance, their machine spirits demanding daily rituals of appeasement and repair. 14 vehicles, from rhinos to land raiders, each with temperamental spirits that must be understood and honored. Weapons by the hundreds, each requiring blessing and maintenance, each carrying the chapter's honor in its mechanisms. I work 18-hour shifts, my augmented body requiring less rest than my battle brothers, my mind interfacing directly with technical manuals and diagnostic spirits, while my hands perform the physical labor of maintenance. I tell myself I am still Hadrian. I tell myself the years on Mars have not fundamentally changed who I am, only equipped me to serve the chapter in new ways. I maintain this fiction with the same dedication I maintain the chapter's weapons. Brother Sergeant Theron visits my forge sometimes, bringing damaged equipment, staying to talk while I work. These visits are precious to me in ways I struggle to articulate, even to myself. He speaks of battles I have not witnessed. Brothers, I barely remember campaigns fought while I was elbow-deep in Prometheum engines and machine spirit negotiations. I listen, my augmetic hands never stopping their work, my eyes, at least one of them, tracking his face for expressions I remember meant friendship, camaraderie, brotherhood. Do you miss it? He asks me once, watching as I perform the ritual. Consecration of a plasma gun that had misfired during the Cronus defensive actions. The fighting, I mean. Being in the thick of it with your brothers. I consider his question while my servo arms manipulate sacred unguents and my organic hand traces litanies of repair across the weapon's casing. Do I miss it? The question seems to come from very far away, as if he is asking about someone else's life. I serve the chapter, I say, which is not an answer. The machines need me. Without proper maintenance, they fail. When they fail, brothers die. My duty is here. That's not what I asked, he says quietly, and something in his tone makes me stop my work and look at him directly. His face shows concern, perhaps even pity, and I analyze these expressions with a detachment that troubles me. When did I start analyzing emotions rather than feeling them? I do not think about it often, I tell him, which is closer to truth. There is always work. The work is necessary. Contemplating alternatives serves no purpose. He nods slowly, but his expression suggests I have confirmed something he suspected, something that saddens him. He leaves soon after, and I return to my work, but his question lingers in my mind like corrupted code I cannot debug. Do I miss it? Do I miss being the warrior I was? Do I miss feeling the things that warrior felt? I do not have answers. I have only duty and the machines and the endless work. Combat comes, of course. We are space marines. War is our purpose. But even in battle, I am separate now. I deploy with the company when my technical expertise is required in the field. My servo harness laden with tools and weapons, my augmented body proof against hazards that would challenge even Astartes' physiology. I fight when necessary, but fighting is now secondary to my true purpose, keeping the machines functional, performing emergency repairs under fire, communing with damaged machine spirits, and coaxing them back to operation. On Garen Prime, I watched Brother Maxius fall, his armor breached by orc weaponry, his primary heart pierced. I am 15 meters away, repairing a Razorback's damaged drive system, while bolter fire screams overhead. Through my augmetic sensors, I see his life signs fail, watch his suit's machine spirit register catastrophic biological system failure. I mark the location for recovery, update my tactical awareness, continue my repairs. The Razorback's machine spirit is in pain. I can feel its distress through my neural interface. And 6 brothers depend on this vehicle for transport and fire support. The living brother is beyond help. The machine can be saved. I make the logical choice. I save the machine. Later, I will wonder why this choice required no hesitation, no internal conflict, no moment of human doubt. Later, I will wonder what happened to the Hadrian who would have dropped everything to try to save his brother, no matter how futile the attempt. But in the moment, I work. My hands move with augmented precision. My mind split between the physical task and the machine communion, and Brother Maxius becomes a data point. Recovery coordinates, equipment status, biological termination timestamp. Filed, catalogued, moved past. The years accumulate, 20 years since Mars, 30, 40. I measure time differently now, not in memories or milestones, but in maintenance cycles, in missions completed, in brothers killed and equipment salvaged. My forge chapel fills with relics, pieces of honored machinery from fallen vehicles and broken armor, each bearing the name and service record of the brother who wielded it. I maintain these relics with fanatical precision, speaking the names of the fallen during my daily rituals, and this is how I honor the dead. Not with grief that has become difficult to access, but with perfect maintenance, with eternal vigilance over their mechanical legacies. Theron receives promotion to company champion, then later to honor guard. I'm proud of him. I think I am proud. The emotion feels distant, observed through layers of cognitive processing, but I identify it as pride and hold to it as evidence that I still feel, I still care. I am still Hadrian beneath the augmentations. We speak less as the years pass, not from animosity or intent, but from simple divergence. His life is the company of brothers, the glory of combat, the camaraderie of the honor guard. My life is the forged chapel, the machine spirits, the endless work. We inhabit different worlds now, though we serve the same chapter. When we do speak, I notice him studying me, searching my augmented features for traces of the brother he once knew. I wonder what he finds. I wonder if anything recognizable remains. I still remember the important moments, the day we were inducted together, both of us barely more than boys despite the gene seed already working its transformations. The first time we fought side by side on Cronus, back to back against a greenskin horde, perfectly synchronized. The night before I departed for Mars, his grip on my arm, his promise that I would return. These memories remain clear, preserved with perfect fidelity in my enhanced cognitive systems. But they feel like someone else's memories, like records I have been given, detailed and accurate, but lacking the emotional weight that should accompany personal experience. I know these things happened to me. I cannot quite remember what it felt like to be the person they happened to. Part B. Deep routine. Time becomes an abstract concept, measured only by the ship's chronometers and the chapter's campaign calendar. 70 years since Mars, 80, a century. The chapter's roster changes, new brothers replacing fallen ones. Entire combat squads composed of warriors who never knew me as anything but Techmarine Hadrian, the red-robed keeper of machines who speaks in binary cant and keeps to his forge. The work continues. It never stops. I repair and maintain, bless and consecrate, commune with machine spirits, and perform the sacred rites of the Omnissiah. My hands move through practice patterns worn so deep they require no conscious thought. Disassembly, diagnostic, repair, reassembly, consecration. The ritual never changes. The work never ends. Days blur into weeks, blur into months, blur into years. I fight. I kill. I move forward. I fight. I kill. I move forward. The pattern of combat becomes mechanical, appropriate given what I have become. Enemy contact. Threat assessment. Target prioritization. Weapon discharge. Casualty evaluation. Equipment recovery. After-action maintenance. Reports filed. Rituals performed. Ready for the next engagement. I'm efficient. I am effective. I am a perfect instrument of the chapter's will. But somewhere in that efficiency, something vital has been lost. I perform the actions of a space marine, fulfill the duties of a Techmarine, serve the Emperor and the Omnissiah with unwavering dedication. Yet I do it all from a place of profound emotional remove, as if I am observing someone else's life, piloting this augmented body through its prescribed motions without truly inhabiting it. The memories of before, of being fully Hadrian, of being a warrior among warriors, grow vague around the edges. I remember that Theron and I were close. I remember that we shared brotherhood, but I struggle to recall specific conversations, specific moments of connection. The emotional textures have faded, leaving only factual records, dates, locations, events stripped of their meaning. I stand in my forge chapel and ask the empty air, am I still the same person? The machine spirits hum their responses, incomprehensible to anyone without my augmentations, perfectly clear to me. They do not understand the question. They are what they have always been, serving their functions without existential crisis. I envy them this certainty. The ship of Theseus paradox haunts me. If every plank of a ship is gradually replaced, piece by piece, is it still the same ship? If every part of a man is gradually replaced, augmentation by augmentation, is he still the same man? I am less than 30% organic now. My brain remains mostly flesh, though threaded through with neural implants and data ports. My heart is original, one of the three the Emperor's gift provided, though augmented with mechanical reinforcement. These fragments of original Hadrian persist in a shell that is primarily machine, which parts contain the self. If my brain is still mostly mine, am I still me? Or has the integration of technology into that brain altered it so fundamentally that continuity of self is an illusion? A comforting fiction maintained only by memory, and even memory has become suspect, stored partially in biological engrams and partially in data cores. The boundary between organic recollection and machine storage increasingly blurred. I watch other Techmarines seeking answers in their examples. Brother Telamon, who has served for 3 centuries, is more machine than man. His augmentation so extensive that only his head remains obviously organic, and even that is a patchwork of implants and mechanical enhancements. He speaks almost exclusively in binary cant now, finds interaction with unaugmented brothers uncomfortable, spends 90% of his time in forge chapels or mechanicus facilities. Is that my future? Is that what I am becoming? Brother Creus, by contrast, clings desperately to his humanity. He maintains the rituals of brotherhood, forcing himself to attend company gatherings, to engage in conversations about topics he no longer finds interesting, to laugh at jokes he no longer finds funny. I see the strain in him, the effort required to maintain this performance of humanity. He is fighting a losing battle against his own augmentations, and I cannot decide if his resistance is noble or futile. I occupy a middle space between them, neither fully surrendered to the machine nor desperately clinging to the flesh. I simply exist, performing my duties, maintaining my isolation, asking questions I cannot answer and no longer remember why they matter. On Volanis, during a siege that lasts 14 months, I perform emergency repairs on a damaged Dreadnought, one of the chapter's most sacred machines. The brother entombed within, venerable ancient Galan, has served for over 400 years. His organic body reduced to little more than a brain and torso suspended in amniotic fluid within an armored shell. We commune through the machine interface, his consciousness blending with mine through the neural connection, and for a moment I experience his existence, the eternal half-sleep of the Dreadnought. The vast gulf of time he has witnessed, the profound isolation of being a walking tomb. You fear this, he tells me, his voice resonating directly in my mind, bypassing Vox units entirely. You fear becoming like me. losing the last vestiges of what you were. The words are difficult. I am not certain there are vestiges left to lose, Ancient One. There are, he assures me, and I feel something like amusement from his ancient mind. You would not fear their loss if they were already gone. But time is patient, young one. Time takes everything eventually. The question is not whether you will lose yourself. The question is whether you will accept what remains. His words offer no comfort, only prophecy. I complete the repairs, withdraw from the communion, watch as the Dreadnought stomps back toward the front lines, this ancient brother in his walking sarcophagus, and I wonder how long until I too am more sarcophagus than brother. The centuries pass. I know this because the chronometer tells me so. Subjectively, it feels like no time at all, or like all time at once, an eternal present moment of work and duty extending infinitely in all directions. I cannot remember faces anymore. Not clearly. Brother Sergeant Theron, I remember he was important. I remember we were close, but his face is a blur now, features lost to time and degrading organic memory. I have hololithic records, of course, can call up his image with perfect accuracy. But the image feels disconnected from the memory. Data without context. Fact without feeling. My mother's face, gone. I had a mother once. Before the transformation into Astartes. I remember that I remember her, if that makes sense. I recall that she was important, that I felt love once. But the actual memory is corrupt, inaccessible, overwritten perhaps by centuries of mechanical thinking and augmented perception. Sometimes I see women among the chapter's support personnel and feel a ghost of something. Recognition without substance, emotion without object. Is this grief? Am I mourning something I can no longer remember having? The work continues. I maintain, I repair. I fight when necessary. I serve the chapter with unwavering dedication, and the dedication is genuine even if the emotions that should underpin it have faded to almost nothing. I am the perfect servant, perhaps, undistracted by sentiment or attachment, focused entirely on function and duty. But the cost. Emperor, the cost. On Tertian 7th, I witness a young Techmarine arrive from Mars, fresh from the forges, still adjusting to his augmentations. He moves awkwardly, his servo arms twitching with poor integration, his augmetic eyes unable to focus properly. I watch him and remember, faintly, distantly, that I was once like this. Uncomfortable in my own body, mourning what I had lost. Still clinging to the hope that I could remain essentially unchanged despite the radical alterations. I should help him. I should offer guidance, brotherhood, the comfort of shared experience. Instead, I simply observe, document his struggles with clinical detachment, and return to my work. He will adapt as I adapted. He will lose himself as I have lost myself. He will serve the chapter excellently as I serve. Nothing I say will change this trajectory. The Mechanicus does not create Techmarines. It creates machine hybrids who serve as Techmarines, and the distinction matters, though I cannot quite articulate why. During meditation cycles, I attempt to catalogue what remains of Hadrian. My name, though it is just designation now, my gene seed, though processed through so many augmentations that its purity is theoretical. My memories, degraded, corrupted, increasingly questionable. My values, duty, honor, service. But are these mine or simply programming, the indoctrination of chapter and Mechanicus overlaying whatever personality I once possessed? If I am merely the sum of my programming and augmentations, then the original Hadrian is dead, has been dead for decades or centuries, and I am simply a construct that continues his work. But if some essential core remains, some continuity of consciousness, linking me to that young warrior who stood with his brothers and felt warmth and belonging, then I am a tragic figure, aware of my own dissolution, unable to stop the gradual erosion of self. I prefer the first interpretation. It requires less grief. The chapter fights on Galax Tertius against a splinter fleet of Tyranids, and I deploy to the front lines to maintain equipment under combat conditions. The hive creatures swarm around us in numbers that darken the sky, and I work mechanically, efficiently, dispassionately. Brothers fall around me. I note their deaths, mark their equipment for recovery, continue my work. A carnifex charges my position. and I kill it with my servo harness's plasma cutter. Not from survival instinct, but because its death is necessary for me to continue my assigned tasks. The creature's corpse steams in the acidic rain, and I step over it without emotion, without even the satisfaction of a kill confirmed. It was obstacle. Now it is not. Problem solved. Am I even alive anymore? Or am I simply a very sophisticated machine pretending to biological processes, going through motions that simulate life without truly living? I process nutrients. I perform maintenance on myself, as I do on the chapter's equipment. I execute assigned tasks with optimal efficiency. These are the functions of a servitor, not a space marine. Yet I continue to bear that designation because enough of my organic core remains to satisfy technical definitions. A memory surfaces, or what might be a memory, might be a corrupted data fragment I can no longer distinguish reliably. Sunlight, warmth, the sensation of wind against bare skin. Laughter, my own unaugmented human. These things existed once. I was present for them. They happened to this body or the body this body used to be. But they are so distant now, so alien, that they might as well have happened to someone else entirely. I have been this thing I am now, longer than I was ever Hadrian the warrior. The balance has shifted. The machine existence has outlasted the human one. If identity is based on duration, then I am more Techmarine than I ever was, brother. More Mechanicus than Astartes, more thing than man. And the most terrifying realization, I have stopped caring. This observation, which should trouble me deeply, which should spark some desperate resistance against my own dissolution, registers only as data. Interesting, notable. Filed away with 10,000 other observations of my own psychological degradation, catalogued with the same emotional investment I bring to tracking power armor maintenance schedules. I am losing myself, have perhaps already lost myself, and I observe this loss with perfect mechanical detachment, unable to summon the human horror that should accompany such awareness. And that inability is itself evidence of how complete the transformation has become, how thoroughly Hadrian has been overwritten by the thing wearing his designation. The work continues. It always continues. I am very good at my work. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is all I am now. Function without identity, purpose without person, eternal service without the self to give it meaning. The machines are grateful in their way. I understand them better than I have ever understood any living thing, and they understand me in return. We are kin, the machines and I. Perhaps we always were. Perhaps Mars simply revealed what I was always meant to become, and Hadrian the warrior was merely a larval stage, a temporary state before metamorphosis into this final form. I work, I serve, I endure, and somewhere in the deepest partitions of my deteriorating organic memory, the ghost of someone who was once human screams silently into the void of my consciousness, unheard and unanswered. The message arrives during the fourth watch, transmitted through secure chapter channels, and I process its contents 3 times before the full meaning penetrates the layers of technical thinking that have become my default state. Brother Sergeant Theron has fallen. Not fallen, that is the euphemism. The polite language we use to avoid the stark reality. Brother Sergeant Theron is dead, killed during boarding actions against a Chaos cruiser in the Baal system. His body recovered, his gene seed harvested, his equipment catalogued for redistribution or enshrinement. The message is factual, detailed, clinical. It provides all relevant information. It does not provide space for grief. I am assigned to perform maintenance on his recovered equipment, his power armor, damaged but salvageable, and his weapons, bearing the scars of his final battle. Standard procedure. The Forge Master believes this is an honor, assigning me to restore the equipment of my oldest brother. He does not understand, cannot understand, that this assignment is torture of a kind my extensively augmented body is not equipped to process. Theron's armor arrives in my forge chapel 3 days later, delivered by servitors who place it on the maintenance altar with mechanical precision and depart without ceremony. I stand before it for 17 minutes and 43 seconds, my internal chronometer tracking time I wish I could not measure, and I stare at the ceramite plate scarred by battle, stained with dried blood, his blood. and something happens in my chest that might be pain or might be a malfunction of my augmented respiratory system. I reach out with my augmetic hand. Fingers, tools, they are tools now. Not fingers, touching the breastplate where a chaos blade had punched through, piercing both hearts, destroying the primary and damaging the secondary beyond the Laraman cell's ability to compensate. The metal is cold under my sensors. Temperature reads 291.3 Kelvin. The blood has oxidized, chemical analysis confirming it as Astartes type. Ultramarines genetic markers present. This is all data. This is all information my augmented senses provide. But beneath the data, somewhere in the degraded organic core of my mind, something screams. I know this armor. I have maintained it dozens of times over the decades, know every quirk of its machine spirit, every scar from every battle. I have repaired breaches and consecrated repairs, spoken the litanies of function and honor over these plates, while Theron stood beside me, alive, present, real. This armor is empty now. The man who gave it meaning is gone, and I am expected to restore it, to prepare it for the next warrior who will wear it, to erase the last physical traces of my brother's existence and make it ready for someone else. I cannot do this. I should be able to do this. I have performed this service hundreds of times for dozens of fallen brothers, with perfect technical precision and appropriate reverence. But I cannot do this. Not for him. Not for Theron. Why? I ask the empty forge chapel, my voice corrupted by vox distortion, sounding mechanical even in anguish. Why can I not feel this properly? Why can I not grieve like a human being? The machine spirits hum their electrical responses, sympathetic in their way but utterly incapable of understanding. They know function and dysfunction, operation and failure, but not loss as conscious beings experience it. Once I was nothing like them, now I am too much like them, and the distinction has become my prison. I force myself to work. My hands move through familiar patterns, diagnostics, damage assessment, cataloging necessary repairs. The work is meditative, mechanical, should be comforting in its routine. Instead, every movement feels like desecration, like I'm erasing him piece by piece, removing evidence of his existence to make room for his replacement. The helmet. I lift it carefully, my servo arm supporting the weight, though it is negligible even to unaugmented Astartes. The eye lenses are cracked, the vox grill dented. The interior padding is stained dark with blood from facial wounds. I can see, with my augmetic vision's resolution, individual DNA markers in that blood. I could, if I wished, perform complete genetic analysis, confirm identity with absolute certainty. I remember, and this memory is suddenly, painfully clear, the day Theron received this armor. We were both young, barely a decade into our service, and the ceremony of armor bestowal was sacred, meaningful. I stood with the company as the chaplain blessed each plate, watched as Theron was clad in the chapter's colors, saw the pride in his face. He had looked at me afterward, grinned, actually grinned, the expression so human it hurt to recall, and said, "How do I look, brother?" "Like an ultramarine," I had told him, "like a true son of Guilliman." That memory exists with perfect clarity, pristine and detailed, because it was important, because it mattered, because in that moment I had felt genuine happiness for my brother's achievement. The memory has survived centuries of augmentation and mechanical thinking because some fragment of Hadrian had protected it, kept it safe, refused to let it degrade. And now the man in that memory is dead, and I'm holding his helmet, and I cannot cry because I have no tear ducts anymore. Cannot scream properly because my vox-corrupted voice cannot carry true human anguish. Cannot even collapse in grief because my augmented body maintains perfect balance and posture regardless of my mental state. I should have been there, I tell the helmet, my voice barely above a whisper. I should have been fighting beside you, not here, not in the forge, alone with machines. I should have been with you, but I was not with him. I have not been with him, truly with him, since I departed for Mars over a century ago. We have existed in parallel, serving the same chapter but occupying different worlds, and the gap between us widened with every passing year until we were strangers who shared history but no present. I was too busy with my machines, my duties, my endless work. And now he is gone, and I will never have the chance to bridge that gap, to reclaim any fragment of the brotherhood we once shared. The Forge Master enters my chapel, his servo arms clicking with each movement, his augmetic eyes glowing in the dim light. He observes me standing motionless, holding Theron's helmet, and I see him process the scene with the same clinical analysis I have applied to countless situations. "You are experiencing difficulty with this assignment," he states. Not a question, simply observation. "He was my brother," I say, and the words feel inadequate, hollow, unable to contain the complexity of what I am trying to express. "We were inducted together. Before Mars, before this." I gesture vaguely at myself, at the augmented shell that has replaced most of Hadrian. The Forge Master is silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable behind augmetic features. "Then we all lose brothers, Hadrian. The chapter endures. The machinery must be maintained. Your emotional response is understandable, but ultimately counterproductive. Organic attachment creates inefficiency. This is why the Omnissiah's gifts are necessary. They free us from such limitations." His words trigger something in me, a response that builds from the depths of whatever organic humanity remains in my extensively modified brain. "Free us," I repeat, my voice rising, distorting through the Vox corruption. "Or strip us of everything that makes existence meaningful. We do not feel grief, so we call it efficiency. We cannot connect with our brothers, so we call it focus. We lose ourselves piece by piece, and we call it improvement. When did we become so willing to lie to ourselves about what we have lost?" The Forge Master regards me with what might be surprise, though his augmented features make such assessments difficult. "You are experiencing a crisis of faith," he says carefully. "In the Omnissiah, in your augmentations, in your purpose." I am experiencing the recognition that I have already lost everything that mattered. I correct him, the words pouring out now. Decades or centuries of suppressed questioning finally breaking through the carefully maintained barriers of duty and service. Theron is dead, and I should be devastated. I should be broken. I should feel something proportionate to the loss of my closest brother. But all I feel is this absence, this hollow space where emotions should be. I can identify that I should grieve. I can logically understand the significance of his death, but I cannot feel it properly, cannot experience it as anything other than data, information, another input to be processed and filed away. "Then you have achieved what the Mechanicus seeks," the Forge Master says, his tone matter-of-fact. "Transcendence of limiting organic emotional states, the ability to function regardless of personal loss. This is the goal, Hadrian. This is what we are meant to become." "No," I say, the denial coming from somewhere deep, somewhere I had thought long dead. "No, this is not transcendence. This is death. I am dead, have been dead for years or decades or centuries, but my body continues functioning so no one notices. Theron is in a coffin, and I am in this augmented shell, and which of us is truly more dead? At least his suffering has ended. At least he will not wake each day to discover that another piece of himself has been filed away, categorized, forgotten. At least he died knowing he was still human, still a brother, still himself." I am shouting now, my Vox unit distorting the words, and the Forge Master takes a step back, his servo arms raising defensively. I do not care. All the centuries of quiet suffering, of unasked questions, of gradual dissolution are pouring out of me in a torrent I cannot control and no longer wish to. "I was Hadrian once," I tell him. Tell myself, tell the empty air and the humming machine spirits who are the only witnesses to this breakdown. I had brothers. I had purpose beyond function. I felt warmth without calculating thermal output. I saw beauty without reducing it to wavelength analysis. I was alive, truly alive, and I traded that life for efficiency, for capability, for the ability to serve the chapter in ways that required me to cease being the person I was. And you tell me this is transcendence? This is not elevation, this is amputation. We have cut away our humanity and called the wound healing. The Forge Master's expression hardens. You speak dangerously, Techmarine. These words border on heresy against the Omnissiah. Then let me be a heretic, I say, my voice dropping to a whisper. Exhaustion flooding my systems, biological and mechanical. Let me doubt the Omnissiah's wisdom. Let me question whether the price of his gifts is worth paying, because I have paid it, paid in full, paid with everything I was, and I look around at what remains and I see function without purpose, existence without life, service without soul. If this is what the machine god offers, then perhaps he asks too much. Silence settles over the forge chapel, broken only by the ambient hum of power conduits and the whisper of air filtration systems. The forge master studies me for a long moment, his augmetic features inscrutable, and I wait for censure, for punishment, for the consequences of my heretical outburst. Instead, he says quietly, "Complete the maintenance. The chapter needs the armor ready for reassignment." He turns and departs, his robes whispering against the deck plating, leaving me alone with Theron's equipment and my crisis. I stand there, holding the helmet of my dead brother, and I ask the question that has haunted me for over a century, but which I have finally allowed myself to voice completely. If they have replaced so much of me, if the person I was is gone and only this machine hybrid remains, then who grieves for Hadrian? Who mourns the death of the brother I used to be? Theron has the chapter. The chapter will remember him, honor him, speak his name. But who speaks for the Hadrian who died in the forges of Mars? Who stands witness to his passing? The machine spirits hum their responses, and I understand them perfectly. But they are not answers. They are only the echoes of my question, reflecting back from beings that cannot comprehend what I have lost because they have never possessed it. I am alone. I have always been alone, and Theron's death has simply made that loneliness impossible to ignore any longer. I complete the repairs on Theron's armor over the course of 6 days. The work is meticulous, reverent, perhaps the finest maintenance I have ever performed. Each scratch buffed away, each scar either repaired or consecrated as battle honor, each system tested and retested until they perform beyond standard specifications. The armor's machine spirit responds to my ministrations, grateful in its way, and I whisper to it stories of Theron, feeding the spirit memories of its former wearer so that something of him persists in the metal. On the 7th day, I take what remains of Hadrian's humanity and I set it aside as gently as I can. This is not defeat. This is not surrender. This is acceptance of what I am, what I have become, what I must be to continue serving the chapter that gave me purpose when I was young and still believed purpose was enough. The crisis has passed. The breakdown has run its course. What remains is clarity, cold and perfect as a blade, fresh from the forge. I am not Hadrian anymore. Perhaps I have not been Hadrian for decades, for a century, for longer than I can accurately determine. The person who bore that name, who stood with Theron and felt brotherhood as a living warmth, who looked at stars and saw beauty rather than navigation data, that person died somewhere in the forges of Mars or the endless centuries of service afterward. I am what remains. I am the function that continues after the person has gone. And strangely, terribly, there is peace in this recognition. I perform the final consecrations on Theron's armor, speaking the litanies with a voice that no longer tries to sound human, no longer pretends to emotions I cannot reliably access. The words are pure function now, ritual divorced from feeling, and the machine spirit accepts them as it accepts all proper maintenance, with mechanical gratitude, with optimal performance, with perfect understanding between machine and machine. The armor is assigned to a new bearer, a young sergeant who will carry Theron's legacy forward. I watch the ceremony from the back of the assembly hall, my augmetic eyes recording every detail with perfect fidelity, my emotional response muted to near non-existence. The chapter endures. The machinery is maintained. This is what matters. This is what I exist to ensure. Duty calls. It always calls. The 4th Company deploys to Krithos IV, combating a chaos incursion that has corrupted the local defense forces and threatens to spread. I deploy with them, my servo harness laden with tools and weapons, my augmented frame proof against hazards that would challenge lesser beings. I am not excited. I am not afraid. I am simply operational, functional, ready to perform my assigned role with optimal efficiency. The battle is fierce. I work throughout, maintaining equipment under fire, performing emergency repairs on damaged vehicles, speaking the machine tongue to spirits distressed by violence and entropy. Brothers fall around me, their names register, their equipment status updates in my awareness, recovery coordinates are marked. I process these losses with appropriate gravity, but without the crippling grief that might compromise my effectiveness. Each death is a tragedy. Each death is also data. Both things are true, and I have learned to hold them in balance without letting either overwhelm the other. I fight when necessary, killing with mechanical precision when enemies threaten my work or my brothers. There is no rage, no battle fury, no righteous anger. Only targeting calculations, threat assessment, optimal munition selection. I am very effective. The enemy dies efficiently. The machines are protected. My function is fulfilled. During a lull in the fighting, I perform maintenance on a Dreadnought, connecting my neural interface to commune with the ancient brother entombed within. We do not speak in words. Our consciousness blend through the connection, machine spirit and machine hybrid and machine tomb dweller merging into brief unity. He understands what I am now, what I have become, because he has been there, has walked this path of gradual dissolution centuries before me. You have accepted it, he observes, his thoughts flowing into mine, the loss, the transformation, the death of the self. There was no other choice, I respond, my thoughts melding with his in the communion. Resistance only prolonged suffering. Acceptance brings peace, does it? He asks, and there is something like sympathy in his ancient consciousness. Or does it simply bring numbness you have learned to mistake for peace? I consider his question while my hands work automatically, replacing damaged components, rerouting power systems. Does the distinction matter? I function. I serve. I endure. What else is there? Nothing, he admits. And everything. But you are too young yet to understand the difference. Give it another few centuries. Ask me again then, if either of us still lives. The communion ends, and I withdraw from the Dreadnought systems, my consciousness returning fully to my own augmented frame. The ancient walks back toward the front lines. This brother, who has been more machine than man for longer than I have existed. And I wonder if I have glimpsed my future in his endless half-life of service and isolation. Perhaps I have. Perhaps that future is inevitable. Perhaps it has already arrived, and I simply have not recognized it yet. The campaign on Krethos 4 lasts 63 days. We are victorious. The chaos forces are purged, the corrupted infrastructure sanctified, the population re-educated in imperial truth. I survive without significant damage. My equipment functions optimally throughout. My contribution to the victory is noted in after-action reports. By any measure, I have performed my duty admirably, and I feel nothing about this. No pride, no satisfaction, no relief. Just the cold recognition of tasks completed, objectives achieved, function fulfilled. I'm a tool used properly. This is the height of my existence now. We return to the Macragge's honor, to the familiar corridors and forge chapels that have been my world for longer than most of my battle brothers have been alive. I return to my work, endless, necessary, consuming. The machines need maintenance. The machine spirits require communion. The sacred tools of the Emperor's will must be kept in perfect working order, or brothers die, campaigns fail, the chapter suffers. This is my purpose. This is all I am now. Sometimes, in the deep watches when even augmented warriors seek rest, I access the memory files of that young warrior who once bore my name. Hadrian, who stood with Theron and New Brotherhood. Hadrian, who felt sunlight and called it warmth rather than thermal radiation. Hadrian, who laughed and grieved and loved and hated and experienced existence with immediate, unmediated intensity. The memories are degrading, corrupting, losing coherence as both organic recall and digital storage slowly fail. Soon they will be gone entirely, and the last traces of that person will vanish into entropy's embrace. I observe this process with detached interest, the way a magos might observe an interesting decay pattern in ancient data cores. Sad, perhaps, in an abstract way, but inevitable. And inevitability must be accepted. I work. I serve. I endure. The chapter needs me. The machines need me. This is enough. This must be enough because nothing else remains. My servo arms adjust a misfiring bolter. My augmetic eyes perceive the microscopic flaw in the firing pin assembly. My hands perform the repair with precision measured in microns. The work is perfect. The work is always perfect. I have become very, very good at my work, having stripped away everything else that might distract from it. Is this what the Emperor intended when he created the Astartes? Is this what Guilliman envisioned for his sons? Warriors who serve so totally, so completely, that they cease to be individuals and become pure function, instruments of the Imperium's will with no existence beyond their utility? Perhaps. Or perhaps I am simply what happens when duty and augmentation and endless time grind away at a person until only the useful parts remain, the rest falling away like a sculptor removing excess marble to reveal the statue within. If so, the statue is not beautiful, but it is functional. And in the grim darkness of the far future, function is all that matters. The machine spirits sing their electrical hymns, and I understand them perfectly. They are my brothers now, my family, my only companions in this long existence. They do not judge. They do not mourn what I have lost. They simply accept what I am. And in their acceptance I find something resembling contentment. I am Techmarine Hadrian of the Ultramarines 4th Company. I maintain the chapter's sacred machinery. I serve the Emperor and the Omnissiah with unwavering dedication. I am very good at what I do. And if the price of that excellence was everything that once made me human, well, the chapter endures. The work continues. I am content with this. I must be content with this. There is nothing else left.